Welcome to Silicon Valley Nonprofits, a service of KMVT Community Media. I'm Bev Lenahan, your host, and today our guest is Randy Barth, founder and CEO of Think Together. Thank you for coming today, Randy. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you, Bev, so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to get to know you a little bit. Well, I know you've had a lot of success strengthening our youth with Think Together, and I know you're passionate about this work. So tell me a little bit about where this passion comes from for you.
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of a faith journey. And so our work started down in Orange County. We started a little program after a gang shooting in a tough neighborhood. And there were some volunteers from a church I was involved with. And this gang shooting was interesting because the mothers organized to take the neighborhood back from the gang. And there was a little local newspaper wrote a story about it called West Side Story. It was in West Side, Costa Mesa. And a friend of mine was a Catholic priest whose parish encompassed this neighborhood. And I called him up and I said, is there something we could be doing to help support these moms take the neighborhood back from the gang? And so we went and met with them. And one of the things they said is we need a safe, quiet place for our kids to study after school in the neighborhood. Because this particular neighborhood was a bunch of high-density apartments, and the kids were bused to school and dropped back in the neighborhood with really nothing to do.
Wow,
and
so the safety was important and the quiet was important.
The safety and the quiet, because in a lot of these areas, and the same thing happens in some of the communities up here, because the rents are so expensive compared to folks, the service worker income, is you wind up with multiple families living in an apartment. So kid comes home from school, it's very hard to find a place to study, and the parents in this case all spoke Spanish and they couldn't really help with their schoolwork. So we rented a little 3-bedroom apartment in the neighborhood thinking we'd have maybe 30 kids and a handful of volunteers from the church. And the first day we had 100 kids at our door.
Oh my goodness.
And we had no idea what we were doing. But over time, there were about 10, we got a bunch of volunteers, and about 10 of them were retired teachers. And they took this place and turned it into a little school. They call it La Escuelita. They still call it that in the neighborhood. And we wound up renting multiple apartments, and we built an elementary school program, a middle school program, a high school program. And from that one street, we've sent over 400 kids to college.
Yes.
And the first 150 or so have graduated, and we have architect, engineer. We have a 2-time Emmy Award-winning TV producer.
Oh, wow.
Works for CNN in Atlanta now. We have our first medical doctor, graduated from medical school last year. And this spring, we have our first student, Jose Avance, graduated from Harvard.
Oh, boy.
All from one neighborhood. And so when we think about with the right support system, I mean, any street in America would be proud to have these outcomes for their children.
It sure is true.
Their street. So for me, was really, we saw that we could, with the right support system, that these kids could achieve their full potential. And so as we went along, we discovered, well, there's a lot of neighborhoods like this, and there's a lot of need.
Many.
So we thought, how can we scale this? And that's really become a passion project for me. So over time in my own career, I started my adult life as a stockbroker, and then I became CEO of a company, and we sold in 2003, and it gave me an opportunity to do this full time. And so we've scaled up the work now statewide in California.
It's such an encouragement to hear that someone had a successful career like you and then put your resources to use in a way that's really helping where it's badly needed. Oh, that's great.
Well, it's been a privilege for me to be able to do that, too.
I'm sure. Well, I know you've had a lot of success in other parts of California, and now you're really working here in the Bay Area. So tell us a little bit about the expansion here.
Yeah. Well, Silicon Valley is important in so many ways. It's important globally. It's important in California and in the U.S. And the things that we work on are problems that are writ large here. So you guys are ground zero for income inequality. You have some of the highest wealth in the world, and you have a lot of poverty on the east side of San Jose and elsewhere,
Yes,
East Palo
we
Alto,
do.
and elsewhere in the community. And so really and at the core of that income inequality is education inequality.
Yes.
And so, across the U.S., and certainly in California, we have something called the achievement gap, where the average white and Asian student dramatically outperforms the average Latino and African American student. And so we're in the business of closing that, working to partner with schools to close that achievement gap. And so to do that here in Silicon Valley, where there's such a dramatic problem, and yet the size of the problem, the size of the gap is huge. The numbers of students involved are not so unmanageable that you could never make a dent. And we work in Los Angeles. The magnitude of the problem is so massive across
Like
all of Southern California, or places like Chicago, that we feel that it's fixable here. And if we can get some initial successes here, like we did in the Shalimar neighborhood, but across school districts and maybe across the east side of San Jose, for example, that would create both. It would solve an important problem here locally, but it would also, because of the wealth and the philanthropy and the thought leadership and the visibility of Silicon Valley, that can help the work spread more quickly that it could do elsewhere.
Maybe in other areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
So part of your job is finding those partnerships with the schools and the other influentials who can help make those things happen.
Right. So my role, I'm not an educator.
I don't know about that.
So my role is really as this bridge builder between communities of need and communities of wealth, and to really match those two up, and then to provide investment opportunities, philanthropic investment opportunities that are targeted and impactful for the donor community, and opportunities that are effective and not just chasing money, for school districts, to really pair that up in a systematic, effective way to really get the outcomes we want for our students.
And you have several key programs that you use to work with the students.
Yes.
Briefly describe those.
Yes. So we really do two things. So we started, as I mentioned, at Shalimar being an after-school program, and we're the largest after-school program provider in the state.
That's Southern California.
Yeah, yeah. And so now we're statewide, and so we're in about 500 schools across the state. We're in about 30 schools here in Silicon Valley.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And so in Alum Rock and Newark and San Jose Unified.
Good news.
And up in Daly City, up north a little bit. And so we do what we would call wraparound programs. So after school, summer, early childhood programs, and then also some derivatives of after school. So we'll do a STEM program, a math program, a sports program, arts programs.
So you identify the needs in that particular school area.
Right.
And where the priorities can have the best payback. Right?
Exactly. So we really listen to school districts, in many respects, are our customers. And so we listen to what their needs are and try to fulfill their needs. Because we're really almost like a school district at a school time program. So we have a curriculum department and training and all that. So we have essentially this menu of opportunities that we can draw down on and meet the local need. And then we're very data driven. And so we get a nightly upload of student data from about 2/3 of our school districts. So we get a nightly upload on about 1 million students.
All right.
And so that shows us we can see what's working and not working in these various schools. And so a few years ago, our highest performing and most improved low-income schools had worked with this school consulting firm called Orinda Education. And they come in and do really a systems change approach to chronically underperforming schools and school districts. It's really systems change work. And there we work with the leaders in the school district as well as the teachers. So in that part so we really have two parts of the organization now. One is direct services to students, and then one is professional services to the adults in the system.
So I think that having both sections working in the same with the same ultimate goal is really important, because that will give you leverage, right?
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Yeah, and scale,
yeah,
the ability
absolutely.
to scale.
Yeah.
So part of this work, I'm sure, is the social skills of our young people.
Yes.
Because many of them, if they get the educational piece are often lacking the social
soft
piece.
skills. Yeah.
The soft skills.
Yeah.
So is that part of your curriculum as well?
It is. So there's very much all the way embedded through our programs is a leadership component. And so students have the opportunity to lead in a classroom setting, lead at a school setting.
Very good.
And then have their own social interaction, and then they have their elections. So it's kind of a civics lesson, and so
very
they
good.
have creating their own student councils and things like that. But oftentimes for kids that maybe get overlooked in the broader student council of, they're not necessarily the most popular kids on campus, so they have their own opportunities to do that in the out-of-school time environment. And then as they get older, we do the interviewing skills, and we have a lot of internships, and so we give them kind of job skills and job prep. And the same thing with searching for college and figuring out how to fill out their financial aid forms, and so
financial
a lot
literacy.
of those, yeah. And then also the informal learning environment also has an opportunity for collaboration, and so the working as teams and some of those kinds of skills that we can build.
Life skills.
Yeah.
Life skills.
Yeah, which is what employers are looking for.
And you know that as a former employer, you understand all too well why this is a benefit to business as well to the young people and their families.
That's right.
For sure.
Yeah.
It works very well that way. So you have a Project 2 Million initiative.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we started off in Shalimar, and we've kind of wandered around, journey over 20 years or so. And over time, we've learned a lot. We don't have all the answers, but the answers are out there. And through this kind of data platform, we know where some of those are. And so in California, we have about 6 million students, public school students in California. And there's about 3 million or so that are operating on grade level. There's about 1 million that are operating a little bit below grade level, and there's about 2 million that are failing by any measurement.
Tragic.
And so that's a third of the kids in our state. And so it's bad both for those students and their families, but it's also bad for us as communities and as an economy. In California, over the years, we've had the most educated workforce in the world.
In the past, yes.
And today, we now have the least educated workforce in the developed world when you look at all in. And so we've got, training these young people up that we've seen at Shalimar have the same, bell curve of human potential. Given them, high-performing schools and the right support systems outside of school, we can close that achievement gap. And so it's an audacious moonshot, but we want to try to really close the achievement gap for 2 million kids in California. Wow. Both by ourselves, but obviously not by ourselves, I should say, as a Catalyst organization, but in collaboration with other like-minded providers in schools and school systems and philanthropists.
Well, I know the Y has had quite an active after-school program, working on a lot of this too.
Absolutely.
And I'm certain that you can collaborate with the efforts that they've had here in the Bay Area.
Very much so, yeah, for sure.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, how can we here in the Bay Area help you? How can we help Think Together? I love that name.
Yes, yeah.
How can we help?
Well, I think so through philanthropy, there's volunteers opportunity to help kids get the soft skills and that sort of thing. But you can visit our website at thinktogether.org, and there'll be all kinds of opportunities will be articulated there.
So you've got room for volunteers, room for some other resources to come your way.
School district partnerships and philanthropy.
Good. I hope there are a lot more business people out there and former school teachers who hear this and want to help.
Yeah,
it would be great to close that 2 million gap.
And we think it's doable. I mean, Silicon Valley is the leader in the world in big, bold ideas and making change and conquering big problems. And so we think this is a great place to help us, launch this Project 2 Million.
Wonderful. Good fortune to you, Randy, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Bev, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.